Hey guys, this episode is inspired by your comments on a previous Middle Ground.
Make sure you stick around to the end because we want to tell you about how you can be even more involved.
Enjoy the episode.
Because people are anti-sex. That's why we're having the...
No, I am pro-sex.
Me too.
I am not ashamed.
Because if you're pro-sex, you're pro-pornography.
That's by your definition.
Well, that's exactly right. That's why we're gonna agree to disagree. Hi, I'm Buck, and I'm a human rights activist and pro-porn.
Hi, I'm Abigail, and I'm an aspiring physician, and I'm pro-porn.
Hi, I'm Riley. I'm an adult performer, and I'm pro-porn.
Hi, my name is JK. I am a porn addiction recovery coach, and I'm passionate about helping men who struggle with compulsive sexual behaviors.
Hi, my name is Maria. I run a youth organization, and we educate on this issue.
My name is Nicole. I'm 21 years old. I'm headed to law school next year. I have been a first-hand witness of the devastating effects porn can have in personal relationships.
Can I have my anti-porn people on the left and my pro-porn people on the right, please? I have watched porn.
I've watched porn in the past, and I think I've watched more than my fair share of it, to the point that it changed my life. But right now I don't, because I'm at a point where it's been a decade. I won't be going back to it.
I watch porn. I also produce porn. What a great medium to use to help to explain to people different kinds of bodies, different kinds of sexualities, different ways that people fantasize about things in a healthy manner.
I started off watching porn as young as 12 out of curiosity, and eventually it led into my sexual exploration and loving my body. So I watch porn on a daily basis to, satisfy myself.
Hey guys. I don't watch porn. It's not like I don't think about sex or anything like that, but that's just something I've only seen cause destruction in the relationships that I've been close to, and I've purposely stayed away from it.
Don't you think they already had a problem before the pornography?
Sure, yeah.
So do you think the pornography just pushed it forward and made the situation worse?
I don't think it's the cause. I think it's a symptom of the cause. It certainly pushed forward into issues of deceit, of mistrust, and broken relationships that certainly weren't helped by an exposure to pornography.
But what if you saw a healthy relationship around pornography? Would that change your mind?
I think amazing relationship is subjective.
Of course.
I think you could also direct that to me.
Yeah.
The thing is, professionally, I've just never seen it. We do have cases where they thought they were open to it, and one of them just got addicted to it.
What is addiction?
Addiction is when it starts interfering with other aspects of your life, when it interferes with your career, when it interferes with your finances, when it interferes with your erection. I couldn't masturbate for years unless I was viewing pornography.
Do you think shame has something to do with the reason why people feel that they get addicted? I get shamed all the time for my career, but what I believe is that people have created this idea that pornography is negative, pornography is bad. People use these to blame or springboards to say, well, he used alcohol and he watched pornography, so that must be the reason.
If that wasn't there, if porn wasn't there, the relationship could be saved. High-speed internet pornography, in my opinion, escalates the decline of any relationship.
Porn has directly affected my sex life.
I developed a sense of entitlement towards certain sexual acts. I expected that a woman in a relationship with me should be willing to give blowjobs or should want to have anal sex. And these things came before what she actually enjoyed. It caused the women a lot of pain. It caused them to look at their bodies and go like, well, he likes me for everything else, but like he's totally not into it, or he's not with me when we're having sex because he's somewhere else imagining that. All of that, when I measured it and I look back, it just came back to porn. I got to a point where I could not have sex or maintain an erection unless I was imagining a scene from some porn that I watched 3 months ago. And sadly, I'm not the only one. It took so long. In fact, for me, it took 18 months. And this involved a lot of work to know that it takes 18 months of journaling before I could have a regular sex life again.
Do you think that there's a way that we, as pornography creators, could create content that would help them?
It's noble. I wish that years ago, I tried to believe that. But once I realized how big the porn industry machine is, I just realized that that is not going to be the solution. I'm yet to meet a client who told me, like, yeah, JK, I downgraded my porn to missionary. I started watching vanilla stuff. No, because it no longer starts with the vanilla stuff, and you all know that.
I will 100% agree with you. There is bad pornography. I will 100%. But that said, that doesn't make all of it the case that it's causing people to have erectile dysfunction. Now me, I'm a transgender man. So I was born a woman and I became a man. I kept my vagina. I kept my vagina for a reason, but that said, I use it within my pornography. And I use that specifically to teach the world about sexual experiences with a man like myself. And it is sex educational on some level. It's also body educational.
But the question that I have for all of you would be, what are we doing about the 11-year-olds who can, one moment are playing Fortnite or Minecraft, and the next they are watching someone of your gender, which they have no understanding of what it is, and using that to determine what their sexual identity is going to be? What are the ethics of it? Is it at all costs I must educate people?
When I was 8, I never got to see anything like that. So guess what I did when I was 8? I cut my arms, I tried to commit suicide. I hated myself because I was a man with a vagina at 8 years old. That was horrifying for me. Now, if I was 8-year-old and I got to pick up my phone and I got to see me, I would be like, actually, wow, I can actually be this man. But I never got that opportunity at 8 years old. Now, I agree with you. Pornography for an 8-year-old is probably not the best thing in the world. But let's talk about the parents. If I had an 8-year-old, I would never let that 8-year-old have a phone or be on the internet.
So interesting. I wanted to run over here. So interesting. I actually remember this story. In like the middle of the talk, a mom, she stood up basically and raised her hand and grabbed the mic. Her son, who was 8 years old, he had Googled sex, so he was curious. He wanted to know, like any other kid. But what he found then was porn. And I would argue that the mainstream pornography does not actually show sex, if you know what I mean. He was not so upset about like what he had seen. He was more upset about the thing that he had seen. He thought, this is what my parents do to each other in bed.
But why is he fearful? That's the thing that I want to understand, why kids are fearful of sexual interaction. I noticed in Sweden and Norway and that particular part of the world, much more open about bodies. What I thought to myself was, well, what if children on some level were taught about sex as a positive thing, as a beautiful thing, as not a...
Absolutely. But that's kind of I think perhaps you're missing the point of the story because he was looking for sex.
Yeah.
You know?
He was, yes.
He was.
But what he saw was not nice.
Not what exactly. But I would assume and I would guess that it was quite aggressive.
I think I wanted to add on to something you were saying. You have to have some level of maturity to watch it. I remember coming across a video where a girl was masturbating with a Sharpie marker. And I thought, oh, look, she's having fun. Let me grab a Sharpie marker. Let me try this. Made absolutely no sense. I remember doing it and I remember thinking, what is this? Like, this makes no sense. So me doing my research, I realized certain masturbation techniques. And then I realized, oh, pornography isn't real. Like, this is just a show. And unfortunately, not everybody has that realization. And I'm not saying that's the cause of the addiction or whatever, but there should be some level of understanding.
Yeah, so I said no to the prompt because I currently do not have a sex life. But I've definitely experienced emotional intimacy with somebody who was addicted to pornography and absolutely experienced hurt within that, of him not being honest about the fact that that was something he struggled with, and that, similar to you, it sounds like, had expectations of me that I couldn't fulfill and that I didn't even know where they were coming from until a year into the relationship. So yeah, I think pornography can affect intimacy without affecting particularly a sex life.
The stigma around porn is too negative.
What I see when I meet kids and youth, especially like in classrooms, is that the stigma and the kind of shame and the guilt is exactly what is kind of hindering the conversation. I'm all about like lifting that off of their shoulders to have, you know, the conversation be open and honest. That's why I think it's so important that this is happening, you know, that we're talking about this.
I believe the stigma should be negative. I think pornography is sinful. The reason I did come over and said it's too negative is because, especially in the church, there's the stigma of shame that comes after asking for forgiveness. I just think that there should be an easier way to move on and grow out of that experience.
So we've talked a lot about the way that stigma and consumption affects the consumer, but we haven't really talked much at all while we've been sitting here about labor and the people who make porn. And from my point of view, I see firsthand so much the way that stigma against porn affects the lives and the safety of porn performers. It is near impossible to get a decent OB/GYN. It is hard to find a mental health care professional who will not pathologize you for your choice of occupation. It leads to a well-known phenomenon, people losing their families just by virtue of what they do for a living. It's the palpable discrimination that sex workers of all kinds face because of this kind of negative stigma. Hi.
Hi. No, this was a good one to watch from the outside. This is the first moment standing there that I was able to see like, okay, wow, because I could feel it this time instead of just listening. I feel the human part, and that's why I say that the stigma hurts. That's what I see. The stigma hurts, but the stigma needs to be there because sometimes it's the only way I can get my point across.
Yeah. Right, so I think what you're saying is that to help the demographic that you need to help, it needs to have that stigma. But stigma in any way, shape, or form is not good for anybody. Once stigma is there, it's just gonna create a negative space. I agree with it. You don't ever have to accept what I do. Only thing I ask for is respect. And respect means no stigma.
While I would maybe not give you exactly what you want as respect for your profession, I absolutely respect you as a person. And I think that your opinions, while totally wrong, are, you have the right to have that opinion.
Our society needs better sex education.
Don't just teach them how sex works biologically. Teach the children about consent and autonomy over their bodies and communication with their partners and how to do that in a healthy way.
Emotional intelligence is one of the things that is lacking among men who watch a lot of pornography. Society, the way we were raised, Disney, and then Pornhub. And then you get this messed up emotional intelligence thing. You know, it all conflicts.
That dang patriarchy again.
You have to understand, man, it's true because I was born as a woman. I was not born as a man. It's dominance, taking, that's what we see as masculinity, and I totally disagree with that. It's very toxic, and so we do need to talk about that. But for myself and my particular porn and my desire to create education around it was specifically targeted to people like myself. It's because I didn't have sex till I was in my 30s. Because I was too freaked out about my body and too freaked out about how people would feel about me. And so I was not comfortable sexually. So I knew once I became sexually comfortable, thank God for that, because that gave me a space to be the man I am today.
Tell me if I'm wrong, but I think we basically all agree that at the end of the day, we recognize sex as something that should be beautiful, that should be a form of expression, just who you're expressing it to and when you express it, we all kind of disagree on.
I think all of these views were necessary to create something nuanced, and I hope that it improves the mental landscapes of the folks who consume what we produce.
All right, right on. Yes.
Big again. Yes.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you. It's totally insane.
I love how respectful of a conversation that was.
That was awesome. Yeah. I think this is one of the best representations of what middle ground is supposed to be. As you guys know, Jubilee, we are trying to create a movement of change makers for human good. And that means you guys. You guys are the movement, so we love hearing from you.
Send us all of your ideas, the good ideas, the bad ideas, the like, okay ideas. We love reading them. As always, subscribe, like us on Facebook, follow us on Instagram, and we'll see you next time.